10 mysterious disappearances that will haunt you. There are moments in history that just refuse to be forgotten, not because they're triumphs or grand achievements, but because they are gaping holes in our understanding of the world. They're stories without an ending, puzzles with missing pieces, absences so profound they echo through generations. These are the stories of people who stepped out of their lives and into the realm of eternal mystery. A world-famous pilot who flew into the horizon and never came back. A hijacker who leaped from a plane with a fortune, vanishing into the night like a ghost. 9 experienced hikers who met a bizarre and terrifying end on a desolate mountainside. For every question we can answer, there are a dozen more that keep us up at night. These aren't just cold cases, they are modern legends, chilling reminders that some truths might be lost forever to the wind, the sea, or the silent, unforgiving wilderness. Tonight, we're exploring 10 of those cases. 10 stories of people who walked out of the world and into a mystery that continues to haunt us. Imagine being able to move through solid objects, to become invisible, to just stop existing. For most of us, that's the stuff of science fiction. But for a few people throughout history, it became a terrifying reality. Not through magic or technology, but through circumstances so strange, so completely baffling, they might as well have been swallowed by the earth. We begin with a story that has captivated the world for nearly a century, a tale of courage, ambition, and a final, deafening silence over the vast, empty Pacific. The last flight of Amelia Earhart. Amelia Earhart wasn't just a pilot, she was a global icon. In an era when women were expected to stay on the ground, she was a symbol of fearless adventure. By 1937, she'd already conquered the Atlantic, becoming the first woman to fly solo across its treacherous expanse. But she wanted one last, great challenge, to be the first woman to fly around the world. Her plane, a state-of-the-art Lockheed Electra 10E, was nicknamed the Flying Laboratory, a perfect testament to her ambition. The journey started on May 21, 1937, in Oakland, California. For over a month, Earhart and her navigator, Fred Noonan, hopped from continent to continent, with the whole world watching. They crossed the Americas, Africa, and Asia, covering thousands of miles of open ocean and unfamiliar land. By July 2nd, they'd landed in New Guinea, exhausted but triumphant. They'd flown over 22,000 miles. Only 7,000 remained, all of it over the vast, unforgiving Pacific. Their next stop was a tiny coral islet named Howland Island, a mere 2 miles long and 1 mile wide, a speck in the ocean. The U.S. Coast Guard cutter, the Itasca, was there waiting to refuel them and guide them in. At 10 a.m. local time, Earhart and Noonan took off from for the most dangerous leg of their flight. They flew for 18 hours through the night. As dawn broke, they started searching for Howland. The final radio transmissions from Earhart are a haunting record of her growing desperation. The Itasca could hear her, but it seemed she couldn't hear them. Her voice, crackling over the radio, was strong but strained. She reported cloudy weather and asked the Itasca to take a bearing on her signal. Her signal strength got stronger, meaning she was close. At 7:58 a.m., the Itasca got her clearest message yet, a sign she was circling nearby, scanning the waves for the island that was their only hope. But with every minute, their fuel was running out. At 8:43 a.m., her final confirmed transmission came through. We are on the line of position 156 to 137. We are running north and south. Then, silence. Amelia Earhart, Fred Noonan, and their flying laboratory were gone. The U.S. government launched the largest sea and air search in its history. For 16 days, ships and planes scoured 250,000 square miles of ocean. Not a single piece of wreckage, not an oil slick, not a trace of the Electra was ever found. The official conclusion was that they ran out of fuel, crashed, and sank into the deep Pacific. But with no evidence, theories have rushed to fill the void for decades. The most prominent alternative theory centers on Gardner Island, now called Nikomaroro, about 350 miles southeast of Howland. Proponents, like the International Group for Historic Aircraft Recovery, TIRE, think Earhart and Noonan landed on Nikomaroro's reef when they couldn't find Howland. The evidence? A possible castaways camp, a jar of freckle cream like one Earhart used, and the skeleton of a castaway found in 1940 whose measurements fit a tall woman of European descent. But after numerous expeditions, no definitive proof, like aircraft parts, has ever been found there. In early 2024, a company called Deep Sea Vision announced a tantalizing sonar image from 16,000 feet of water near Howland that looked like a plane. The world held its breath, but a return visit confirmed it was just a rock formation. The mystery endures. From an icon lost to the sea, we turn to a phantom who dropped from the sky, a man who committed the perfect crime and became an American folk legend. The ghost hijacker, D.B. Cooper. On the afternoon of November 24, 1971, the day before Thanksgiving, a man in his mid-40s, wearing a business suit, walked up to the Northwest Orient Airlines counter in Portland, Oregon. He called himself Dan Cooper and paid cash for a one-way ticket to Seattle. He was quiet, unassuming, and ordered a bourbon and soda. No one on Flight 305 gave him a second thought. But shortly after 3 p.m., as the Boeing 727 climbed into the cloudy sky, he handed a note to a flight attendant. She thought it was just a phone number and pocketed it. Cooper leaned closer. "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." The note was clear. He opened his briefcase just enough for her to see a terrifying mess of wires and red sticks. His demands were simple: $200,000 in unmarked $20 bills and 4 parachutes, ready when they landed in Seattle. For hours, the 36 passengers had no idea what was happening. They were just told there was a mechanical issue. On the ground, the FBI and airline officials scrambled. In Seattle, the passengers were swapped for the money and parachutes. After refueling, the plane took off again, now with only Cooper and a skeleton crew. His new destination, Mexico City. Cooper gave specific flight instructions: fly below 10,000 feet, landing gear down, wing flaps at 15 degrees, a setting that kept the plane slow and low. Sometime after 8 p.m., over the dense, stormy forests of southwestern Washington, Cooper did the unthinkable. He sent the crew to the cockpit, lowered the plane's rear stairs, and, clutching the money, jumped out into the freezing, rain-swept night. He was never seen again. The manhunt, codenamed Norjack, was one of the biggest in FBI history. For years, they chased thousands of leads and questioned over 800 suspects, but found nothing. The hijacker, mistakenly called D.B. Cooper by a reporter, became a legend. The case is still the only unsolved air piracy in commercial aviation history. The FBI has long believed Cooper probably died during the jump. He was wearing a suit and loafers, totally wrong for landing in rugged, wooded terrain at night. The parachute he used couldn't be steered, and he jumped into a 200-mile-per-hour wind. On top of that, he didn't seem to notice his reserve parachute was a training dummy that had been sewn shut, a detail an expert skydiver would have likely checked. For almost 10 years, the case was cold. Then, in 1980, a young boy on vacation with his family found a rotting package buried in a sandbar on the Columbia River. Inside were 3 bundles of cash totaling $5,800. The serial numbers matched the ransom money. The discovery sparked new hope, but only deepened the mystery. The money was found miles from the projected jump zone. Did it fall from his bag? Did he bury it? Or did it wash down river from wherever he landed? The FBI officially suspended the active investigation in 2016. The only physical evidence from the plane was a black J.C. Penney tie Cooper left behind, which has yielded a partial DNA profile, but, so far, no matches. Suspects have come and gone, including Richard Floyd McCoy, who pulled a similar copycat hijacking months later but was eventually ruled out. To this day, D.B. Cooper is a ghost, a question mark who jumped from a plane straight into American folklore. From a man who fell from the sky into blackness, we journey to a place of ice and shadows, where 9 souls ventured into the wilderness and met an end so horrific, it defies all rational explanation. The Dyatlov Pass incident. In the winter of 1959, 10 experienced hikers, mostly students from the Ural Polytechnical Institute, set out on a brutal expedition through Russia's northern Ural Mountains. Led by 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov, their goal was to reach Otorten, a mountain whose name in the local Monsey language ominously means "don't go there." One member, Yuri Yudin, had to turn back early due to illness, a decision that saved his life. The remaining 9, 7 men and 2 women, pressed on. They were all expert hikers, ready for the harsh Soviet winter. They were never heard from again. When they didn't return on schedule, a search party was sent. On February 26th, what they found wasn't just a tragedy, but the start of a terrifying mystery. On the frozen slopes of a mountain named Kolet Syakhl, or Dead Mountain, they found the group's tent. It was heavily damaged, but strangely, it had been sliced open from the inside. All their things, boots, warm clothes, supplies, were still there. Leading away from the tent were 9 sets of footprints, some from people in socks, 1 shoe, or completely barefoot, heading towards a forest nearly a mile away. The first 2 bodies were found under a large pine tree. They were dressed only in their underwear. The branches on the tree were broken up to 5 meters high, suggesting someone had desperately tried to climb it. 3 more bodies, including Igor Dyatlov's, were found between the tree and the tent, positioned as if they were trying to get back to shelter. The medical examiner said all 5 died of hypothermia. One had a small crack in his skull, but it wasn't considered fatal. The real horror was still to come. 2 months later, buried under 4 meters of snow in a ravine, the last 4 hikers were found. Their injuries were catastrophic. Nikolai Thibault-Brignoles had a massive skull fracture. Ludmila Dubinina and Semyon Zolotaryov had crushed chests, with force compared to being hit by a car. A doctor stated the force was too strong to be caused by a human, and crucially, there was no external damage. And it got worse. Dubinina was missing her tongue and eyes. Zolotaryov was also missing his eyeballs. To add another layer of weirdness, some of the clothing on these last victims was found to be radioactive. The official Soviet investigation was brief and maddeningly vague. In May 1959, the case was closed, with the cause of death blamed on a compelling unknown force. The area was sealed off for years. That cryptic conclusion only fueled decades of speculation. The most common theory is an avalanche. Proponents suggest a slab avalanche could have hit the tent, forcing the panicked hikers to cut their way out and run without their gear. The internal injuries could have been from the immense pressure of the snow. But critics point out the campsite wasn't in a typical avalanche path. There were no signs of one when searchers arrived, and the footprints looked orderly, not like a panicked scramble. Other theories get much stranger. The military was active in the area, leading to talk of secret weapons tests gone wrong. Were UFOs involved? Other groups reported strange lights in the sky around the same time. More earthly ideas include an attack by indigenous Monsey people, but investigators found no evidence of a struggle or any other footprints. The mystery of what drove 9 experienced mountaineers to flee their only shelter into the deadly cold, and what caused those horrific injuries, remains one of the most chilling unsolved cases of the 20th century. From the frozen mountains of Russia, we travel to the sunny coast of Australia, where a family day out turned into a nation's enduring nightmare. The Beaumont children. January 26, 1966 was Australia Day, a hot summer holiday. For the Beaumont family in Adelaide, it started out as a normal day. The 3 siblings, Jane, 9, Arna, 7, and Grant, 4, were trusted kids. Jane, the oldest, was considered mature enough to look after her younger siblings. That morning, they asked their mom if they could take the 5-minute bus ride to nearby Glenelg Beach, a trip they'd made on their own many times. She agreed, giving them money for the bus and lunch. They were supposed to be on the 2 p.m. bus home. They never came back. When the 2 p.m. bus came and went, and then the 3 p.m. bus, a knot of dread began to form in Nancy Beaumont's stomach. She and her husband, Jim, rushed to the beach, but there were no clues. By evening, they reported their children missing. What followed was one of the largest police investigations in Australian history, a case that would shatter the nation's sense of security. The investigation quickly uncovered disturbing witness sightings. Several people reported seeing the children at the beach with a tall, thin man with blonde hair in his mid-30s. He was seen playing with them, and at one point, Jane bought snacks not just for her siblings, but for the man too, using a £1 note, money her parents hadn't given her. The last credible sighting was around 12:15 p.m., with the children walking away from the beach with this same man. After that, they vanished. The search was massive. Beaches were combed, the ocean was searched, and every lead followed. The case terrified the country. The Beaumont parents made heartbreaking public appeals, their grief shared by millions. A Dutch parapsychologist was even flown in, claiming he could find the children's bodies. He identified a spot, public donations funded an excavation, but the dig turned up nothing, adding another layer of cruelty to the family's ordeal. Over the years, many suspects were investigated, but no one was ever charged. A man named Arthur Stanley Brown, who looked a lot like the man from the beach and was later convicted of other crimes against children, was a prime suspect, but he died in 2002 without confessing. Another person of interest was a convicted murderer, Bevan Spencer Von Einem, who allegedly boasted about the abduction to a cellmate. But despite extensive investigations, no conclusive evidence ever emerged. The disappearance of Jane, Arna, and Grant Beaumont changed Australia forever. It was an end of innocence, a moment when parents started holding their children a little tighter. The Beaumont parents stayed in their home for decades, waiting for a knock on the door that never came. They have both since passed away, never knowing what happened to their beloved children, whose sunny day at the beach ended in a dark, permanent mystery. From a crime that stole a family's future, we turn to a man who invented the future, only to have his own future stolen from him just as he was about to share it with the world. The inventor who vanished, Louis Le Prince. Before Thomas Edison, before the Lumiere brothers, there was Louis Le Prince. Today, his name is almost unknown, a footnote in film history. But in the late 1880s, this French inventor was on the verge of changing the world. In 1888, working in Leeds, England, he used his single-lens camera to capture the world's first true moving pictures, short clips of his family in a garden and traffic on Leeds Bridge. He was, by all accounts, the true father of cinematography. In September 1890, Le Prince was ready for his victory lap. He had scheduled a public exhibition of his technology in New York City, a demonstration that would have cemented his place in history. Before heading to America, he decided to visit his family in France. After a nice stay with his brother Albert in Dijon, he got ready to go back to Paris. On September 16, 1890, Albert Le Prince walked his brother to the Dijon train station. He watched Louis board the train to Paris, carrying a suitcase that supposedly held his priceless patents and plans. The train left. It was the last time anyone ever saw Louis Le Prince. When he never showed up in Paris, his friends got worried. When he missed his trip to New York, his family knew something was terribly wrong. An investigation was launched by French police in Scotland Yard, but it was like Le Prince had dissolved into thin air. No one on the train remembered seeing him or seeing him get off. His luggage was gone too. With no body ever found, he was officially declared dead in 1897. His disappearance at that exact moment has spawned some dark theories. The most popular one, held fiercely by his widow, was industrial espionage. The world of invention in the late 19th century was a cutthroat patent war. The prime suspect in this version of the story has always been his main rival, Thomas Edison. The theory goes that Edison, known for his ruthless business tactics, had blueprints assassinated to steal his invention or at least get rid of the competition. It's a compelling story, but there's no direct evidence to back it up. Other theories are just as intriguing. One suggests Prince was deeply in debt and faked his disappearance to start a new life. But why would he do that just as his work was about to pay off? Another theory points to a family fight with his brother over an inheritance. A more tragic possibility emerged in 2003 when a photo was found in the Paris police archives of an unidentified man pulled from the Seine River in 1890. The man looked a lot like Prince. This has led many to believe that, overwhelmed by debt, he took his own life. But even this is disputed. Some say the man in the photo was too short. The consequences of his disappearance were huge. With Prince gone, the world forgot him. Thomas Edison and the Lumiere brothers went on to get the credit and a place in the history books. The man who truly captured the first moving picture became a ghost, his legacy swallowed by the same void that took his life. From a mystery at the dawn of cinema, we jump to a case that unfolded under the glare of 24/7 media, a tragedy on a Caribbean island that became an international obsession. The disappearance of Natalee Holloway. In May 2005, Natalee Holloway was an 18-year-old from Alabama on the verge of her future. A bright, popular student, she just graduated with honors and was headed to the University of Alabama on a full scholarship. To celebrate, she and her classmates took an unofficial graduation trip to the sunny, seemingly safe island of Aruba. It was supposed to be 5 days of fun. For Natalee, it was the final chapter. On the last night, May 30th, 2005, the students went to Carlos and Charlie's, a popular nightclub. Natalee was last seen leaving around 1:30 a.m. in a car with 3 young local men. Joran van der Sloot, a 17-year-old Dutch honor student living on the island, and 2 brothers, Deepak and Satish Kalpo. She didn't show up for her flight home. When her packed luggage, passport, and phone were found in her hotel room, the alarm was raised. What followed was one of the most intense missing persons cases of the 21st century. Hundreds of volunteers flew to Aruba to help local authorities and Dutch Marines search the island. Her face was everywhere on the news. The case became a media firestorm, fueled by the agonizing public pleas of her mother, Beth Holloway, who refused to let the world forget her daughter. The investigation immediately focused on the 3 men. Their stories kept changing. First, they said they dropped Natalee off at her hotel. Then, they admitted they took her to a beach. Joran van der Sloot, in particular, became the central figure, weaving a tangled web of confessions, retractions, and lies that would last for nearly 2 decades. He was arrested multiple times but always released due to a lack of evidence. The case stalled. No body was ever found. For years, the mystery lingered. Van der Sloot remained a figure of dark fascination and was even convicted of murdering another young woman, Stephanie Flores, in Peru in 2010, a crime committed exactly 5 years to the day after Natalee disappeared. Then, in 2023, a stunning breakthrough finally provided an answer, if not full justice. As part of a plea deal for trying to extort money from Natalee's mother, Joran van der Sloot finally confessed to killing her. In a chilling account, he admitted that on the beach, Natalee rejected his sexual advances. In a fit of rage, he bludgeoned her to death with a cinder block and then took her body out into the ocean. Her mother, Beth Holloway, finally heard the truth from her daughter's killer. After 18 years of agonizing uncertainty, the how was known. "It's over," she told reporters. Because the statute of limitations for murder in Aruba had expired, van der Sloot will likely never be prosecuted for Natalee's death. He was sentenced to 20 years in U.S. federal prison for extortion. The search for Natalie Holloway the person is over, but the search for her remains will likely continue forever, lost to the Caribbean Sea. From a case that gripped modern media, we go back to a chilly winter's evening in Texas, where a Christmas shopping trip for three young girls ended in a 50-year mystery. The Fort Worth Missing Trio. December 23, 1974, was full of holiday excitement in Fort Worth, Texas. For 17-year-old Rachel Tlaika, 14-year-old Renee Wilson, and 9-year-old Julie and Mosley, it was a day for last-minute Christmas shopping. Rachel, who was recently married, and her friend Renee planned the trip. Julie, a neighbor, asked to tag along. The girls headed to the Seminary South Shopping Center. They were supposed to be home by 4 p.m. They never returned. As the hours passed, their families grew frantic. They drove to the mall and started searching. Around 6 p.m., they found Rachel's Oldsmobile parked in the Sears lot. Wrapped Christmas presents were on the floorboard. There was no sign of the girls and no sign of a struggle. The family stayed at the mall all night, paging the girls, their hope fading. The initial police response was slow. Back then, missing teens were often assumed to be runaways. This theory seemed to be confirmed the next morning, Christmas Eve, when a bizarre letter arrived at the home of Rachel's husband, Thomas. The envelope was formally addressed to Thomas A. Tlaika, which was strange since Rachel always called him Tommy. The note inside said, "I know I'm going to catch it, but we just had to get away. We're going to Houston. See you in about a week. The car isn't Sears sick. Upper lot. Love, Rachel." But the letter was suspicious. The handwriting didn't look right, and experts later said the signature seemed traced. The families were certain Rachel didn't write it and believed it was a cruel attempt to throw investigators off. As years turned into decades, the case went cold but never left the minds of people in Fort Worth. Witnesses came forward with fragmented accounts. One saw the girls being forced into a truck. Another saw a man force a girl into a van. Thousands of leads were pursued, but none went anywhere. The families never gave up. Rachel's younger brother, Rusty Arnold, has become a tireless advocate for the case. Recent efforts, like searching a local lake after a tip, have turned up nothing. DNA was retrieved from the letter, but so far, no match has been found. 50 years later, the fate of the Fort Worth trio remains one of Texas's most haunting cold cases. What happened to Rachel, Renee, and Julianne? Were they abducted from the parking lot? And who wrote that strange, unsettling letter? For their families, Christmas is forever marked by the day the girls went shopping and disappeared into a mystery that has lasted half a century. From three girls who vanished in the modern era, we step back into one of America's darkest periods, to the story of a man who survived an unimaginable ordeal, only to disappear from history once his story was told. The Lost Freedom of Solomon Northup. Solomon Northup's story is one of the most powerful and harrowing from 19th century America. Born a free man in New York around 1808, he was a skilled carpenter, a talented violinist, and a family man. But in 1841, that life was violently stolen. Lured to Washington, D.C. by two men offering work, he was drugged, kidnapped, and sold into slavery. For the next 12 years, he endured the brutal reality of plantations in Louisiana, stripped of his name and freedom. His miraculous rescue in 1853 and his return to his family is a story of incredible resilience. Almost immediately, he sought justice. The men who kidnapped him were tried but never convicted. Northup then worked with a writer to publish his memoir, 12 Years a Slave. The book was a sensation, a powerful first-hand account of slavery that became a cornerstone of the abolitionist movement. After the book came out, Solomon Northup became a prominent public figure. He went on extensive lecture tours, using his story to advocate for the end of slavery. He was a living testament to its horrors, an activist. And then, he just vanished. The last definitive public record of Solomon Northup is from 1857, on a lecture tour in Ontario, Canada. After that day, the trail goes cold. He disappears from newspapers, from public records, and from his own family story. What happened to the man who had survived so much? The lack of a death record has led to a lot of speculation. One persistent theory is that he was kidnapped a second time and re-enslaved, or maybe even murdered by pro-slavery sympathizers. But many modern historians think this is unlikely. By the late 1850s, Northup would have been in his 50s, considered too old to be of much value to slave catchers. Another possibility is that he simply fell into poverty and obscurity. It's possible he died destitute, his final years unrecorded. A more heroic theory suggests he became deeply involved in the Underground Railroad, helping escaped slaves get to Canada. If true, he would have been operating in secret, his name kept out of records for his own safety. It's a fitting end for a man who knew the price of freedom, but it remains unproven. No grave has ever been found. No death certificate has ever been located. The man who gave the world one of its most vital accounts of slavery was, in the end, denied a final chapter. Solomon Northup, who fought so hard to reclaim his identity, had his final years erased by history. From a man who disappeared fighting for freedom, we travel to 18th century England, for a case so bizarre it sounds like a ghost story, the tale of a man who vanished from a chair in plain sight. The impossible disappearance of Owen Parfitt. The story of Owen Parfitt is one that defies logic, a historical riddle from Shepton Mallet, England. By the 1760s, Parfitt was an old man, his body ravaged by a stroke that left him almost completely paralyzed. He lived with his sister, Susanna, and spent his days in a chair. But in his youth, he'd lived a wild life, telling tales of being a sailor and a pirate. Most people just thought he was an old man with a good imagination. The date is a bit fuzzy. Some say June 1763, others 1768, but the events of that warm summer evening are local legend. As he often did, Owen wanted to sit outside. His sister and a neighbor carried him out in his chair and set him on the cottage porch. He was wearing his nightshirt and sat on his folded greatcoat. His sister went back inside. The scene was perfectly ordinary. Across the road, a group of farm workers was finishing their day, well within sight of the old, crippled man. The road was quiet. Later that evening, around 7 p.m., a storm started brewing. Susanna went to get her neighbor to help bring Owen inside. When they came out to the porch just moments later, the chair was empty. Owen Parfitt was gone. The only thing left was his greatcoat, neatly folded, right where he had been sitting. Panic set in. Susanna knew her brother couldn't have moved on his own. She called out to the farm workers, asking if they had seen anyone. They had seen nothing. They heard no struggle, no carriage, nothing. A frantic search was launched. It seemed impossible he could have gone far. He was paralyzed. If someone had taken him, they surely would have been seen or heard. Yet, they found nothing. No footprints, no drag marks, no sign of Owen Parfitt at all. He had vanished from a chair, in full view of half a dozen people, without a sound. What could have possibly happened? The locals, knowing his tales of piracy, whispered that the devil had finally come to collect his due. A more grounded theory was that his past had caught up with him. Maybe old pirate buddies returned to silence him. But how could they have done it so quietly? Decades later, in 1813, a skeleton was found during construction nearby. For a moment, it seemed the mystery was solved. But on examination, the bones were found to belong to a young woman. The case was investigated as late as 1933, but no new clues ever emerged. The disappearance of Owen Parfitt remains an absolute impossibility, a man, unable to move, sitting in a chair one moment and gone the next. From a single, impossible vanishing, we broaden our scope to a vast, notorious expanse of the Atlantic, a place whose very name is synonymous with mystery, the Bermuda Triangle. The Devil's Triangle. The Bermuda Triangle isn't a single disappearance, but a legend built on dozens of them. It's a vaguely defined stretch of the North Atlantic between Bermuda, Florida, and Puerto Rico that has captured the public imagination like no other place on Earth. For decades, it's been called the Devil's Triangle, a graveyard where ships and planes are said to vanish without a trace. While many incidents have been debunked, a few key cases remain so baffling they form the bedrock of the Triangle's terrifying reputation. The most famous is the disappearance of Flight 19. On December 5, 1945, 5 U.S. Navy Avenger torpedo bombers took off from Fort Lauderdale for a routine training mission. 14 airmen were on board, led by Lieutenant Charles Taylor. About an hour and a half into the flight, the control tower got a disturbing transmission. Lieutenant Taylor sounded lost. His compasses weren't working. "I don't know where we are," he reported. "We must have gotten lost after that last turn." For the next 2 hours, radio operators tried to guide them back, but Taylor grew more disoriented. In the chilling radio chatter, he seemed to reject suggestions, at one point deciding they were over the Florida Keys and needed to fly east, a fatal mistake that took them deeper into the Atlantic. The last transmission was faint and garbled. Then, silence. All 5 bombers and the 14 men aboard them vanished. The tragedy got worse that same evening. A Martin Mariner flying boat, with a 13-man crew, was sent out on the search and rescue mission. Just over 20 minutes after takeoff, it too disappeared from radar. A ship in the area reported seeing a massive explosion in the sky around that time, leading to the belief the Mariner, known for accumulating fuel vapors, had exploded. But no definitive wreckage for either the Mariner or the 5 Avengers was ever recovered. The official Navy report concluded the loss was for causes or reasons unknown. The mystery of Flight 19 is echoed by an even larger, earlier disappearance. In March 1918, the USS Cyclops, a massive 542-foot-long Navy ship, was sailing from Brazil to Baltimore with over 300 crew and 10,000 tons of manganese ore. It was last seen on March 4th. The ship had a powerful radio, but no SOS was ever sent. The USS Cyclops simply sailed into the Bermuda Triangle and was never seen again. An exhaustive search found nothing. To make the story even stranger, 2 of its sister ships, the Proteus and the Nereus, would also vanish without a trace along similar routes in 1941. Theories about the Bermuda Triangle range from the scientific to the supernatural. Explanations include sudden rogue waves, massive eruptions of methane gas from the ocean floor that can sink a ship in seconds, and bizarre magnetic anomalies. Skeptics argue the number of disappearances isn't statistically significant given the high volume of traffic and frequent storms. Yet, the legend persists, fueled by these core, haunting stories of men and machines that entered a patch of ordinary ocean and were swallowed by an extraordinary mystery. The world is full of questions we may never answer. These 10 stories are just a fraction of the strange and unsettling disappearances that litter our history. If you find these mysteries as haunting as we do, and you want to keep exploring the darkest corners of the unknown, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next video. From the silent depths of the Pacific to the frozen slopes of the Ural Mountains, the stories of the vanished leave a permanent mark. Amelia Earhart, D.B. Cooper, the hikers of Dyatlov Pass, they are more than just names in a file. They were real people with hopes and dreams that were stolen by circumstances we may never understand. These cases challenge our sense of order. They remind us that for all our technology and forensic science, there are still voids that can't be filled and silences that can't be broken. The human mind craves a neat ending to every story. But the power of these disappearances is that they refuse to provide one. They exist in a permanent state of suspense, forcing us to confront the uncomfortable truth that some things are simply beyond our grasp. The ultimate fate of these people may be lost to time, but their stories, and the chilling questions they raise, will continue to haunt us for generations. What do you think happened in these cases? Let us know your theories in the comments below.